I own a $70,000 Patek, but most days I wear a $1,500 Serica, and it's not about price. It's about understanding something most people completely miss. See, most people think buying a watch is the end game. It's not. It's the entry fee, because these 10 mistakes, they don't just make you look wrong, they silently tell everyone else you're still a rookie. By the end of this video, you won't just wear a watch properly, you'll understand the why behind every rule. And fair warning, mistake number 7 can literally destroy a $1,000 watch in 10 seconds. Here's what nobody tells you when you get into watches. There's an invisible line between wearing a watch and wearing a watch correctly. And crossing that line isn't about money, it's about knowledge. I'm Jason. I've been collecting for 15 years, and I spent 5 years on the wrong side of that line making these exact mistakes. These mistakes we're covering today, they're not random. They're the social signals and etiquette cues that savvy people notice immediately. Some of these will save you from physical damage. Others will save you from looking like you don't know what you're doing. So let's make sure you don't have to learn these, like I did, the hard way. Mistake number 1 is wearing your watch too loose or too tight. This is the most common error I see, and it's affecting both your comfort and how your watch looks. Too loose, your watch slides around, it looks sloppy, and can get damaged from banging into things. Too tight, and you have indentations in your wrist. It's uncomfortable, and worse, you look like you have no idea what you're doing. The rule is simple. Your watch should sit snugly enough that it doesn't slide more than half an inch up or down your wrist when you move your arm. You should be able to fit one finger, just one, between the bracelet and your wrist. Not 2 fingers, not 0 fingers, 1 finger of space. Now, here's where it gets slightly more nuanced. This 1 finger rule works for most bracelets, but leather straps are different. The leather, you can go slightly looser because the strap conforms to your wrist shape over time. Also, if you have a sports watch you're wearing for actual activity, you can go half a notch tighter than the 1 finger rule so it doesn't bounce around when you're moving. And here's something most people don't think about. The fit can actually affect your automatic watch's accuracy. If it's too loose and sliding around, the rotor movement becomes less efficient. Not a huge deal, but worth knowing. For those of you wearing vintage pieces with slightly stretched bracelets, the older Jubilees are notorious for this. The whole 1 finger rule doesn't apply. Those watches will sit looser, and historically, it's how they were generally worn. Trying to make a 1960s Rolex on Jubilee fit by modern standards, it usually looks wrong. Context matters. Now, if you think fit is important, wait until you hear about sizing, because this is where most people spend thousands on watches and they never actually look right. Here's where a lot of people go wrong. They're focused on what looks cool in photos instead of what actually fits them. For case diameter, the sweet spot for most wrists is 36 to 42 millimeters. And here's my advice. Try before you buy. Quick reality check. Stop looking at wrist shots on Instagram. They lie. The camera distorts perspective and lighting makes everything look perfect. Now, case diameter isn't the whole story. Case height matters too, and this is something people overlook. A thick watch on a small wrist looks worse than the diameter alone would suggest. The watch ends up looking like a hockey puck on your arm. Also, wrist shape makes a difference. Flat wrists can wear slightly larger watches than round wrist, even the same wrist circumference, and brand sizing is inconsistent. A 40 millimeter Rolex doesn't wear the same as a 40 millimeter Seiko because of different lug lengths and case shapes. Here's the interesting part about sizing. In the 1950s and 60s, 34 millimeters to 36 millimeter, that was the standard. That wasn't considered too small, it was just correct proportions. The modern oversized trend is actually swinging back now toward those classic sizes, and that's for good reason. But here's the thing, most people obsess over case diameter, but that's actually the wrong measurement to focus on when determining fit. The real secret to perfect watch sizing is a completely different metric that watch brands deliberately hide from you. I'll reveal exactly what that is in mistake number 9. Now that we know not to wear your watch too loose or too tight, there's still another mistake: placement. Most people either wear it too far down their hand or right on top of their wrist bone, and both are wrong. The correct position is about 1 finger width above your wrist bone. That's the ulna, the bony bump on the pinky side of your wrist. Not halfway down your hand, not sitting on the bone itself, right above it. Why does this matter? If your watch sits on your wrist bone, the crown digs into the back of your hand every time you bend your wrist. If it's too far down your hand, it slides around constantly and gets in the way of everything you're trying to do. This placement actually has a historical military origin. Watches were positioned this way during combat so soldiers could quickly glance at time without having to adjust their arm position or take their hands off their weapon. Functional, not aesthetic. These days, you can adjust based on what you're doing. So some people might wear their watch slightly higher for desk work because it just sits better under the suit cuff, or others go lower for sports activities. And if you have a watch with a crown at, say, the 4 o'clock position instead of the 3 o'clock, you can actually position it a bit differently because, well, the crown won't dig in the same way. The vintage military context is interesting here. That specific placement wasn't about fashion at all. It was pure functionality. What we consider the correct way to wear a watch today comes directly from those practical combat requirements. But over the long period of time, these functional elements have now become placement etiquette. Okay, so the watch fits, it's sized correctly, it's in the right spot, but we need to talk about the strap because this is where expensive watches start looking cheap. Here's the basic hierarchy. Metal bracelets are the most versatile. You can wear them from dressy occasions all the way down to casual. Leather straps work for formal business settings, but not for sports or water activities. And NATO straps are casual only. Never wear a NATO strap with a suit. And rubber straps are for sports and casual wear only, never formal. The visual test is simple. A NATO strap with a suit looks ridiculous. Leather at the beach looks like you don't know what you're doing, and a rubber strap at a wedding? No. We all know that guy who wears a rubber strap with a tuxedo because he thinks it's disruptive. It's not, it's confusion. Here's something that might surprise you. A $500 watch with the right strap will look better and more appropriate than a $15,000 watch with the wrong strap. The strap matters that much. If you're looking at exotic leathers, there's actually a formality hierarchy. Alligator is more formal than crocodile, which is more formal than lizard, and standard calf leather, that's your versatile middle ground. Works formal to business casual depending on the finish. And here's a strategy that serious collectors use. Buy multiple straps for one watch. That single watch now becomes incredibly versatile because you can match the strap to any occasion. Now, there's a famous exception to the NATO rule. James Bond, specifically Sean Connery, made the NATO strap famous by wearing one. But here's the reality. That was technically still casual. Oh, and one more thing. You're not James Bond. The presidential bracelet on certain Rolex models is a perfect example of why metal bracelets are so versatile. It was literally created for the day worn by presidents and world leaders. In the 1960s, this was the most formal bracelet in watchmaking, worn only in formal settings. Today, well, you can wear the same presidential bracelet with jeans and a t-shirt, and it's completely acceptable. That evolution shows you something important. Metal bracelets have become more versatile over time, which is why they're your safest choice when you're building a collection. Etiquette loosened for metal, not for NATOs or rubber. The point is this: the strap is the dialect of watch language. Get it right and you're fluent. Get it wrong and everyone knows you're still learning the vocabulary. Let's talk about context, because the wrong watch in the wrong place is worse than no watch at all. Dress watches are for formal events. They are thin, simple, and usually on a leather strap. Dive and sports watches are actually the most versatile. You can wear them to casual to business casual without any issues. Chronographs work for casual to business settings, but they're too busy looking for formal occasions. And smartwatches, well, gym only. Never wear a smartwatch to a formal event. The classic mistake I see is someone wearing a dive watch with a tuxedo. It just looks wrong. There's some interesting historical context here. In the 1950s and 60s, companies like Patek Philippe specifically marketed their dress watches for tuxedo wear. Thin gold pieces on leather straps. That was the expected pairing. Tool watches like divers and chronographs were originally purely functional pieces, but over time they've become fashion acceptable in more settings. Today, you can wear a Rolex Submariner in most business casual offices without anyone batting an eye. That would have been unthinkable 50 years ago. There's also the intentional rule-breaking factor. Steve McQueen made the Monaco racing watch iconic by wearing it everywhere, including places most people wouldn't. But here's the thing, none of us are Steve McQueen, and what worked for him in that specific context doesn't automatically work for you. Now, understanding when to wear what isn't about rigid rules. It's about reading the room and respecting the occasion. That's not stuffiness, that's social intelligence. All right, quick temperature check before we keep going. I want to see where you guys actually stand on this because the watch community is genuinely split on this one. Question for you, is wearing a dive watch with a suit classic Bond or trying too hard? Drop your answer in the comments. I'm curious if you're Team 007 or Team Know the Rules, because here's the thing. Context changes the answer, and that brings us to mistake number 6. Turn your wrist over right now. Look at the back and see where the clasp is sitting. When the watch is on your wrist and the arm is relaxed, the clasp should rest centered on the back of your wrist, not off to one side. If it's off center, the watch will rotate and slide around during the day, which is annoying and uncomfortable. Here's how to fix it, and this is counterintuitive. You need to remove links from the 6 o'clock side of the bracelet. That's the bottom half. Most people think you remove evenly from both sides. That's wrong. You typically need about 2 fewer links on the 6 o'clock side than the 12 o'clock side. The reason this works is wrist anatomy. The top of your wrist is flatter. The bottom of your wrist, the 6 o'clock side, is more curved around the wrist bone. So you need asymmetric link removal to get the clasp properly centered. This is why when you go to an authorized dealer, they often get it wrong. They're trained to remove links evenly from both sides because it's faster, not because it's correct. Authorized dealers size for the average wrist, but you need to adjust for your specific anatomy. And some brands have micro adjustment clasps that give you extra fine tuning options, while others don't have any adjustment beyond removing entire links. Sizing is the difference between a watch that fights you all day, constantly rotating, digging in, and one that disappears on your wrist until you need it. Get the clasp centered and you'll never have to think about it again. That's the goal. All right, a comment before we keep going. If you're watching this and realizing you're making some of these mistakes right now, don't stress. I made most of these for years. Mistake number 6, I was years into collecting before someone at my AD finally showed me the asymmetric trick. The point isn't to make you feel bad. It's to give you the knowledge I wish I had when I started. So keep watching because the next 4 mistakes, even more fixable. And mistake 10 could literally save you hundreds in repairs. At this point, you might be thinking you've got it all figured out, but this one physically hurts me to see, and I see it constantly. Damaging the watch during strap changes. The common damages are scratching the lug holes, gouging the case and lugs, and breaking spring bars. All of this can be avoided with one simple investment, a proper spring bar tool. Get a Bergeon 6767F or similar. We're talking $15 to $25. Do not use a knife. Do not use a screwdriver. Do not use a cheap spring bar tool. That's how you gouge the case. When you change a strap, do it on a soft surface, either a watch tray or a folded towel. This protects the case from scratches as you remove the spring bars. And learn the proper technique with the spring bar tool. The key technique is to push the spring bar down and toward the case back of the watch, not outward. Most people try to pry it outward, and that's where you scratch or damage things. And pro tip, if you're concerned about damaging the top side of the lugs, use some Scotch tape or painter's tape. Just cut small pieces and apply them to the lugs for extra protection. This has saved me from damaging my lugs more than once. For instance, precious metal will scratch incredibly easy. You need to be extra careful here. Lug hole damage is seriously bad because it's difficult to repair and permanently visible. Even if you get it fixed, you can still usually see where the repair was done, and on a high-end piece, that permanently affects its value. With vintage watches, you need to be even more careful. The lugs are thinner, and if you force a spring bar, especially if you use something besides a proper tool, you could actually break the lug from the excessive force. And certain watches have specific strap removal procedures that really should be done by professionals. Annual calendars and perpetual calendars often fall into this category. Not everything is a DIY job. And here's the irony. The people who know the most about watches are usually the most willing to admit when something's above their skill level. Confidence isn't doing everything yourself. It's knowing when to call an expert. Question: which wrist are you wearing your watch on right now? Because if it's on your dominant hand, we need to talk. The standard rule is wear your watch on your non-dominant hand. If you're right-handed, wear it on your left wrist. If you're left-handed, wear it on your right wrist. Simple. Why? 3 reasons. First, your dominant hand takes way more impacts throughout the day. Door frames, desk edges, accidental bumps. You're protecting your watch by keeping it on the safer wrist. Second, it's easier to wind using your dominant hand while the watch sits on your non-dominant wrist. Though I will say, I always suggest winding when the watch is off the wrist. And third, it just gets in the way less when you're writing, typing, or doing detailed work with your dominant hand. So again, because your dominant hand takes more impacts and gets more scratches throughout the day, you're protecting your watch by wearing it here. Now, there are exceptions. Left-handed watches exist. These have the crown on the left side of the case, specifically for people who want to wear them on the right wrist. There are specific models designed for right wrist wear. Panerai, Tudor, Rolex, just to name a few, make destro watches with the crown deliberately positioned on the left side of the case. Now, there's a specific wear pattern that desk workers develop called desk diver scratch. It's from daily keyboard use, creating a specific scratch pattern on the clasp. The worst cases are usually seen with those that wear their watch on their dominant side. Wearing it on their non-dominant hand won't eliminate this, but it definitely helps. Some temporary exceptions. People will switch wrists for specific activities like golf or tennis to avoid damage to the movement, or because it's more comfortable for their swing. This makes sense if you feel like you just need to wear a watch during your activities. Lastly, here's where this convention actually comes from. Historically, military standards established left wrist wearing because most soldiers were right-handed. They needed their dominant hand free for saluting and weapons. It was pure functionality. The military standard became the cultural norm, which is why most people today wear watches on their left wrist. But the principle isn't about left versus right. It's about wearing it on your non-dominant hand for the same practical reasons those soldiers did. Function first, tradition second. Remember earlier when I said there's a measurement that matters more than case diameter? This is it. Mistake number 9 is ignoring the lug-to-lug measurement. This is the single most overlooked spec when buying a watch, and it matters way more than case diameter. Lug-to-lug is the distance from the top lug to the bottom lug. It's the vertical measurement. This determines how the watch actually sits on your wrist. Case diameter gets all the attention, but lug-to-lug is what really matters for fit. Here's the test. The lugs should not overhang the edges of your wrist. If they do, the watch is too big, regardless of what the diameter says. And here's what's wild. You can have 2 watches with the same 40mm diameter that wear completely differently because one has a 46 lug-to-lug and the other one has a 50 lug-to-lug. Wrist shape is a factor here too. Flat wrist can handle longer lug-to-lug measurements better than round wrist, even at the same circumference. And here's something that'll make you angry. Watch brands heavily advertise the case diameter, but often bury the lug-to-lug measurement at the bottom in a small spec section of their website. They know it's not flattering, and they definitely know what they're doing. For most average wrist, we're talking 6.5 to 7.5 inches in circumference. A lug-to-lug between 46 and 50 millimeters is the sweet spot. Vintage watches actually have an advantage here. They often have shorter lug-to-lug measurements despite similar case diameters to modern watches. The proportions are just normally better. Because watch designers were just more hyper-aware of case architecture and watch design. The modern trend toward oversized cases with excessive lug-to-lug measurements has created a lot of watches that simply don't wear well on average-sized wrists, even though they look impressive in photos. Know your lug-to-lug limit, and you'll never waste money on a watch that doesn't fit. All right, final mistake, and this one can literally brick your watch. What I'm about to go over are best practices. So here's the rule. Never adjust the date between 9 p.m. and 3 a.m. During these hours, the date mechanism is engaged and starting to change. If you force the date change during this window, you can break the gears in the date wheel. I'm not exaggerating. This is a $200 to $500 repair. The correct method is simple. Pull the crown out, advance the hands past 6 a.m. and then set the date. Once you're safely past the danger zone, you can set the date without any wrist. Then continue advancing the hands to the correct time. There are different types of date mechanisms. Quick set date wheels that let you adjust the date independently, and these are the most common on modern watches. But older watches have a slow set date where you have to scroll through the entire 24-hour cycle to make the change. You need to know which one you have. If your watch has both day and date, set the day first, then the date. The sequence matters for the mechanism to work properly. Again, all of this is best practices, so follow these even if it's a simple three-hander. Will it hurt a three-hander if you don't follow this? No, but get used to doing this to develop good habits, so it doesn't matter which watch you're setting. It's the safest bet. And if you have a moon phase complication, the same rule applies, but the danger zone is slightly different. 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. Never adjust the moon phase during that window. For watches with annual or perpetual calendars, follow the manufacturer's protocol exactly. I'm serious about this. You can brick a $50,000 plus watch by adjusting it wrong. Some of these complications should only be adjusted by a watchmaker. Don't experiment. With vintage watches, the mechanisms are extra fragile and replacement parts might not exist anymore. If you break it, it could be extremely costly. Even worse, it's possible you can't even fix it. And this danger zone rule perfectly captures what all 10 of these mistakes are really about. This isn't just about gears. It's about respecting the machine on your wrist, understanding the engineering, and knowing the context. Now, here's what's fascinating about this final mistake, and really all 10 of these mistakes. On the surface, they look like a list of technical rules: fit, size, placement, strap choice, date setting. But what they actually are: social signals and etiquette cues that separate people who own watches from people who understand them. Think about it. Wearing a NATO strap with a suit doesn't damage anything. Setting your date at 10 p.m. won't hurt you. But one broadcast, I know the context. The other breaks a $5,000 movement because you didn't respect the engineering. Whether it's a watch collector or someone that spots fashion and social faux pas, or a business professional that appreciates etiquette, they do notice these things. Not because they're necessarily judging you, but because these details are the language of society. Like it or not, I didn't create these rules. I'm just explaining them because they do matter. And here's the good news. Now you know the language. You understand the why behind the rules, the military origins, the mechanical limitations, the historical context, the social etiquette. You're not just following guidelines anymore. Now you get it. So which of these are you guilty of? be honest and drop a comment, because I personally made mistake 1, 6, and 10 when I started out. The watch community is all about learning and improving, and these mistakes are fixable. You know what else is fixable? Not missing out on our monthly watch giveaways. Subscribe for more videos like this one, and check out our website at thewatchbros.com to win a free watch. Yes, we give away a watch every month. We also have links to all of our social media, merch, and behind the scenes content. I'm Jason. Thank you for watching, and until next time, wear in good health.